All right, let's dive right into this explainer and explore a pretty fascinating business paradox. In traditional economics, the golden rule is basically if you want to sell more of a product, you lower the price. Simple, right? But today, we're going to look at a company that routinely completely defies this logic. We are decoding Apple's psychological pricing strategy. Why is it that most companies are out there slashing prices just to move inventory, while Apple actively raises theirs and somehow still absolutely dominates the market? It's a strategy that fundamentally flips how we view value.
I mean, seriously, think about it for a second. Why do we happily pay more? Why will consumers literally camp out overnight on a sidewalk for a brand new $1,200 iPhone when a highly capable, technically amazing alternative from a competitor exists for just $799? Honestly, both phones are going to make calls, take incredible photos, run similar apps, and yet people are just desperate to hand their money over to Apple. Well, as you'll see, this isn't an accident. It's a heavily engineered reality.
To really grasp how insane this is, let's put some hard numbers on it and set the financial stakes. Most Android competitors out there are kind of scratching out a living on hardware gross margins somewhere between 10 and 30%. But Apple? They completely dwarf the rest of the consumer electronics industry with estimated margins sitting up at 50 to 55% on the iPhone. When you combine that massive profit margin with Apple's absolutely ruthless, world-class supply chain efficiency behind the scenes, you get a premium strategy that turns psychological pricing into astronomical, sustained profit.
Okay, moving right along to Section 1, Price as a Signal. Let's look at why the price itself is actually the strategy.
So for Apple, the high price isn't just the result of their success. It's not like a reward they give themselves for making a good gadget. The price is actually one of the most powerful quality signals a business can use. It acts as a psychological shortcut for your brain. And this is rooted in a real economic concept called the Veblen effect. Basically, this is a phenomenon where the perceived value of something totally exceeds its actual utility. So demand actually goes up as the price goes up, simply because the product becomes a status symbol. Apple leverages this Veblen effect perfectly. They position their devices as luxury items that signal social status and exclusivity. Literally, before you even open the box, that high price tag has already convinced your brain that you've purchased something superior.
Now, this creates a really fascinating divide in the market. On one hand, you have tech reviewers and traditional buyers exhaustively debating objective specifications, things like battery life, RAM, screen refresh rates. But Apple? They're playing a completely different game. They are successfully engineering a psychological experience. The Apple buyer is purchasing social status and an identity signal. For the vast majority of their buyers, that high price tag actually creates the perception of quality, making the whole objective spec sheet completely irrelevant.
That brings us to Section 2, Anchors and Decoys. Let's dig into the specific pricing tricks they use.
So Apple doesn't just rely on an overall premium vibe. They use very specific, heavily engineered behavioral economics tricks in every single product launch to basically nudge you towards spending more. The first trick is called the anchoring effect. This is just human nature, our tendency to rely really heavily on the very first piece of information we see. Steve Jobs was a master at this. Think back to 2007 when he introduced the original iPhone. He projected a massive $999 price tag up on the giant screen first. He just left it there, let the audience absorb it, then boom, he revealed the actual price was $499. Suddenly, the audience felt like they were getting the deal of a lifetime, even though $499 was a crazy amount of money for a cell phone back then.
And guess what? Apple still uses this exact playbook today. Have you noticed their launch sequence lately? They always reveal the most expensive Pro Max model first. What this does is establish a really high mental price anchor in your brain. So when they finally reveal the standard base model a few minutes later, it miraculously feels highly affordable by comparison. By deliberately showing you that $1,200 option right out of the gate, they completely manipulate your baseline. Suddenly, an $800 phone feels like a sensible, completely moderate choice.
Okay, but what if they actually want you to buy the premium version anyway? Enter the decoy effect, also known in economics as asymmetric dominance. This happens when a third, strategically priced option is thrown into the mix just to make the target option look like a way better deal. Notice how Apple almost never offers just one version of a phone? They offer 3 or 4. And that middle pricing tier? Yeah, it isn't just about giving you choices. It is a carefully laid trap.
We actually have the hard data to back this up too. Primary research based on the iPhone 15 shows that when the standard iPhone is presented alongside the $899 iPhone Plus and the $999 iPhone Pro, a massive 51.4% of buyers prefer the Pro. The Plus model is acting as the absolute perfect decoy here.
It's priced just close enough to the Pro that the majority of buyers just nudge themselves upward thinking, well, for just $100 more, I get the titanium frame and the much better camera.
And this brilliant little trap funnels customers straight up to the top. When all the models are presented, including that massive top-tier iPhone Pro Max, the highest-end model captures the highest overall preference at 34.3%. This data proves just how flawlessly Apple's product line funnels customers upward. The decoys do exactly what they were designed to do, culminating in the highest margin product capturing the largest share of the buyers. Honestly, it's a total masterclass in pricing architecture.
Which brings us to Section 3, the ecosystem lock-in.
We've talked a lot about the psychology of that initial hardware purchase, but what about the strategy that secures long-term profitability? How does Apple make sure that once you buy one device, you keep coming back, padding those crazy gross margins over a lifetime? Well, it all comes down to a concept called loss aversion. As humans, we naturally feel the pain of losing something much, much more intensely than we feel the pleasure of gaining something of equal value. Apple has built its entire hardware and software ecosystem around this specific psychological quirk. They make incredibly sure that once you're inside their walled garden, packing up and abandoning it feels like an immense financial and personal loss.
It's a total snowball effect, and here is how it builds in practice. It usually starts innocently enough with the iPhone, but then you want wireless audio, right? So you buy AirPods because they pair instantly. Then maybe you add an Apple Watch, which, by the way, only works seamlessly with the iPhone. Eventually, you buy a Mac to just sync everything together. Every single purchase deepens your integration into their ecosystem. By the end of this timeline, the switching costs are literally massive. Leaving for an Android device doesn't just mean a new phone, it means losing the connectivity of your watch, the seamless audio of your pods, and your shared family ecosystem. Competitors are completely locked out.
And they pull the exact same maneuver with their digital services using something called reference pricing. If you were to subscribe individually to iCloud Plus, Apple TV Plus, Apple Music, and Apple Arcade, it would run you $23.95. That establishes a really high reference price in your mind. But then Apple swoops in and offers the Apple One bundle for all these services combined at just $16.95. Because they set those high individual anchor prices first, the bundle feels like an absolute steal, smoothly locking you into monthly recurring revenue across multiple different verticals.
Finally, let's head into Section 4, the Identity Premium.
This right here is the ultimate reason why Apple's massive gross margins and dominant market position are sustainable year after year, launch after launch. Apple isn't just selling technology anymore, they're selling a belonging strategy. They have spent decades, literally decades, building a deep cultural association around their brand. When you buy Apple, you are buying a visible signal of creativity and taste. They manufacture desire through these highly controlled launch rituals that create a very real sense of scarcity. And all of this creates an identity premium. Sure, competitors can build a faster processor or maybe a sharper camera lens, but they absolutely cannot replicate the social signal of owning an Apple device. It makes Apple virtually immune to pure spec-based competition.
Which brings the resolution of our core paradox into full view. There's a fantastic quote from the sources that sums this up perfectly. Apple's price tag is not what you pay for the phone. It is what you pay for the feeling of being the kind of person who owns one. The price isn't a barrier to entry. It is the gateway to the identity itself.
So I'm going to leave you with this final, somewhat provocative thought. As you look at the incredibly high margins and the frankly brilliant behavioral nudges we've explored in this explainer, ask yourself, next time you go out to buy a piece of technology, are you really just paying for the hardware, the glass, and the silicon, or are you paying to belong? Understanding the psychology of pricing changes absolutely everything about how we see the products we buy every single day.